Hello, this is Saxon Lesson 1. We are comparing and ordering numbers. Make sure you write down your two objectives. The first one is to compare and order integers, and the second one is to find the absolute value of a number. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Before we begin the actual lesson, I always like to have a fun fact of the day. Your fun fact of the day here is insects outnumber humans 100 million to 1. So for every 100 million insects, there's only one human. I like this creepy little guy right here. So that's your fun fact of the day. Okay, let's get started with the actual lesson now. Example 1 says to arrange these integers in order from least to greatest. Okay, well, least to greatest just means that we want to put them in order from lowest to highest. Okay, so again, we're going to put these things in order from lowest to highest. That's what least to greatest means. Okay, just a review there. So, well, the lowest number out of all these, I'm looking at these four numbers going, well, negatives are always lower than positives, so negative 3 has got to be the lowest number. And the farther negative you go, the lower we get. Okay, so that crosses off negative 3. So we have 3, 0, or 1. Well, the next lowest is 0, the next lowest is 1, and the next lowest is 3. So from lowest to highest, we've got negative 3, 0, 1, and 3. And we took care of all four of our numbers, so our list is complete. When you do a problem like that, it's pretty easy. Just put them in order, okay? But make sure you do include all the numbers, because sometimes the list could get pretty big. Alright, let's go ahead and go on to example number 2. Example 2 says to graph two numbers that are 4 units away from 0. So far when we graph, here's what we want. We want a number line. Okay, when you draw your number line, make sure it's got arrows in both directions. And we want two numbers that are 4 units from 0. Well, I'm going to go ahead and plop 0 down right in the middle of this number line here. And I want to go two numbers that are 4 units from 0. So that means I want to go 4 units this way. So I'm going to go ahead and count 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and I want you to go ahead and label all those numbers. So this is positive 1 because that's bigger than 0. Positive 2, positive 3, and positive 4. Okay, and when we graph a number, they just want us to put a little dot where that number is on the number line. Okay, well, that is one number that is 4 units away from 0, because if I counted here, that's 1 hop, 2 hops, 3 hops, 4 hops. Okay, well, I can also go the other direction on the number line. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go 1, 2, 3, 4 more units away from 0, but I'm going in the negative direction. So those numbers would be negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and negative 4. Okay, so I am 1, 2, 3, 4 units from 0 again. Okay, so that is a dot on negative 4. Okay, and again, so we're 4 units this way from our 0 here. 4 units in either direction. So those numbers would be 4 and negative 4. So my answer would be a number line that looks like that, right there. Okay, again, positives go this way, and we get bigger as we go to the right. Negatives go this way, and we get smaller as we go to the left, because negative 4 is smaller than negative 3. So there's our two numbers that are 4 units from 0 on our number line. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to example 3. Okay, example 3 says to graph the numbers in this sequence on a number line. Well, again, that means we want a number line. Okay, and we want the numbers in that sequence. Okay, well, if we are looking here, I can see that we've got a couple negatives and a couple of positive numbers. So they surround 0, so I'm going to go ahead and put 0 right in the middle here. Okay, and when I do a number line, I want to make sure, okay, when I count on my number line, which means I put a little tick mark here, and I count up a number, and then I go up another number, and so on, I want to make sure I want to count in a series of numbers that makes sense. Okay, so for example, my highest number here is 3. Well, that's not too far from 0. Okay, so I want to go ahead and make sure that I can at least count out to number 3. So if I go 1, 2, I need at least one more mark there for 3. Okay, if I was to count by threes, sorry about the dog there. If I was to count by threes, Okay, and that would be 3, 6, and I'd be going out too far. Okay, so count by a number that makes sense to include the numbers on this line. So I'm going to go ahead and count by ones here. So here's 1, 2, 3. Okay, then I got to go in the negative direction, and I got to go at least to negative 3 because that's my smallest number. So I'm going to go to negative 1, negative 2, and negative 3. I want to graph the numbers in that sequence. Well, this sequence are all of these odd numbers here. So I have to put dots on the odd numbers. So I'm going to put a dot on negative 3. I'm going to put a dot on negative 1. I'm going to put a dot on positive 1. And I'm going to put a dot on positive 3. But now this sequence does not stop. See these little ellipse here? That's the dot, dot, dot. That means this keeps going and going and going. So I would go to 5 to 7 and so on. So since this pattern keeps going in this direction, I've got to make sure that I color in this arrow. Okay, to show that that keeps going on in that direction. So I'd go to 5 to 7 and so on. Same thing, I've got the ellipse over here in the negative direction, which means it keeps going in the negative direction. So I've got to make sure I color in this arrow as well. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So notice I got dots on the numbers that are in the sequence, and I've colored in the arrows because I've got an ellipse on this side and on this side. So I've got to go in both directions still. Okay, so that's how we would graph numbers in a sequence on a number line. Notice I did not graph any other numbers. I didn't color anything else in because those numbers, like negative 2, is not an odd number. Neither is 0, neither is 2. So those are not colored in. Alright, let's go on to example 4. Example 4 says to compare. So that means I want to know, is it less than, greater than, or equal to? Okay, well, negative 3 and negative 1, if I'm comparing those, I know that since negative 3 is farther into the negatives, that it is a smaller number than negative 1. So I've got to draw my less than symbol in there. Okay? So my less than symbol, because again, it'd be a hungry, hungry alligator that wants to eat the bigger number. Alright, so how I would compare this, I would just write less than. So there's my answer. Because if I'm a hungry alligator, I want to eat the bigger number. And the bigger number in this case is negative 1. Okay, so on part B, I've got the absolute value of negative 3 compared to the absolute value of negative 1. Okay? Well, remember that graph we did when we said what numbers are 4 spaces away from 0? That is because that's what absolute value means, is how many spaces away from 0. Okay? So when you see this set of lines, that means how far from 0. You should write that in your notes. Okay? And again, this is called absolute value. So absolute value has these signs around a number. Okay, so there's something inside there. This means absolute value of negative 3. This means absolute value of negative 1. And it means how far are those from 0. So the first thing I've got to do is figure out what is the absolute value of negative 3. How many spaces from 0 is negative 3 on a number line? Well, if I were to draw a number line and start at 0 and count backwards, 1, 2, 3 to negative 3, that is 1, 2, 3 spaces away. So the absolute value of negative 3 is positive 3. Likewise, the absolute value of negative 1 is going to be positive 1. Okay? Because negative 1 is 1 space away on the number line from 0. Okay? It doesn't matter what direction you go in, if it's positive direction or negative direction, it just matters how many spaces away. So the absolute value of negative 3 is positive 3. And the absolute value of negative 1 is positive 1. The absolute value of a number is always positive. Okay? So it's always positive for absolute value. So now what I'm really comparing is positive 3 to positive 1. And I know that my alligator would want to eat that. Okay? Because 3 is bigger than 1. And the absolute value of 3 is bigger than the absolute value of 1. because negative 3 is farther away from 0 than negative 1 is. So that is our lesson. So if you got any questions, make sure you ask them. Okay, that was your first Saxon lesson. So hopefully the homework goes well. Good luck on it. Happy homeworking.